Then the coach at the time comes out and says, I don't think she was doing it on purpose. The coach right there.
And that's her right there.
That's her in the back. And that's the foul. What do you mean you can't see the foul?
Unbelievable.
And she says she got a better view than some of the referees got. And then this is how she comes and cries on TV about the criticism she got. How dare people on social media.
The hate, the fear-mongering, the divisiveness, the stuff that's trying to hijack our league will not win. It won't win. We are united. We are.
Something about Stephanie White's explanation never quite added up, and Patrick Bet-David was not about to let the missing pieces disappear. The foul on Sophie Cunningham was already controversial, but then the footage started raising questions that made White's later version much harder to defend. Suddenly, what looked like one heated basketball moment became a full-blown mystery involving loyalty, accountability, and a former player. And the deeper Patrick looked, the stranger the entire story became.
This is the DeJonai. This is, go back a little bit to show the previous, go all the way to the front. This is how she plays. Look,
damn, girl.
She's obviously very sweet. She doesn't at all have any negative intent at all. She doesn't hit hard, and she plays very clean basketball.
White privilege.
And watch what she does to the eyes. You see?
Ooh,
goes
wow.
for the eyes. Yeah. So you
That
can
is a
pause it right
dirty
there.
play.
More
so you can
privilege.
pause it right there. So then the coach says, no, I don't think she would ever do anything dirty. She would never do that. The internet goes after her. Then she's like, wait a minute, how dare you guys call me out? She says, I did not see the foul.
Patrick Bet-David has never been the type to let a contradiction slide, and when the footage from that Indiana Fever game started circulating, he didn't just notice the obvious problem in front of him.
He tweeted white privilege in all caps. Maybe it's just me, but I'm unaware that it's white privilege to get beat up during a WNBA game. You ask me. Carrington started to backtrack on her words after that tweet, but come on, you can't go back from that. What's out is out, and you made it very clear on your stance. And here's the thing: if you feel this way, most of the WNBA feels this way.
Make no mistake about it, Carrington targeted Cunningham. She targeted her because of her political.
He pulled up the replay, looked straight into the camera, and said exactly what a growing number of people were already thinking, but hadn't yet dared to say out loud. Stephanie White saw that play happen in real time, and instead of being honest about it in the moment, she tried to walk it back days later, once the heat became too loud to ignore.
I stand by them. I will always stand by them. Everybody else can go to hell.
We will go high. Love, grace, humility will win. And then you tell everybody to go to hell. You think that's going to work for you, Coach White? Think that's going to work for you? The reality of the situation is none of that stuff will win if it's left up to you, Stephanie White. Because you're not handling it right. You playing right in.
That single observation, delivered with the kind of blunt certainty that has made Bet-David one of the most compelling voices in sports commentary, turned a controversial foul into something far more significant than a single unfortunate play.
Guys, unfortunately, the saga continues when it comes to DeJonai Carrington and the scuffle she got into, with Sophie Cunningham in yesterday's game when the Chicago Sky took on the Indiana Fever. But now, head coach of the Indiana Fever, herself being Stephanie White, is now facing backlash and criticism because she has now actually come out, in the post-game interview in defense of DeJonai Carrington. Now, guys, I'm going to read to you what Stephanie White had to say as well as what Sophie Cunningham had to say in regards to DeJonai.
It became a story about leadership, loyalty, and the uncomfortable questions that arise when a coach's past relationships collide with her present responsibilities. The sequence of events that triggered this entire firestorm began with what can only be described as a genuinely alarming moment on the basketball court. DeJonai Carrington went up for what looked like a routine block attempt on Sophie Cunningham, but instead of making contact with the ball or even coming close to a legitimate contest, she caught Cunningham directly across the neck with enough force that Cunningham dropped to the floor immediately and needed to be checked on by trainers courtside. The officials didn't need a second look to understand the severity of what had just occurred. It was ruled a flagrant 2 on the spot, and Carrington was ejected from the game before the broadcast had even finished replaying the hit from a secondary camera angle. Nobody in that arena required a slow-motion replay to recognize that something dangerous had taken place. The immediate reaction from the crowd made that abundantly clear, and the way Cunningham remained on the floor for an extended period only reinforced the gravity of the situation. What happened immediately after that foul, however, is what truly set this story apart from the countless other hard fouls that occur throughout a typical WNBA season. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White walked right past her own injured player, Sophie Cunningham, to check on DeJonai Carrington after the hard foul. That single decision, captured on broadcast cameras and replayed across social media within minutes, raised eyebrows immediately and set the stage for everything that followed.
Stephanie White, I've been a defender, the coach of the Fever. Get her out of there. Get her out of there. Fire her ass today. I don't want her back on that bench. Stop defending the other players. Oh, she plays hard, DJ. That's just her being her. You see Caitlin in the press conference almost cover her ears and her eyes. Defend your players. First of all, you're wrong. It was a dirty play and she's gone. But when do you ever see in like the NBA, a coach not defend their own players? She hasn't done it with Caitlin when Caitlin got punched in the...
It was a visual that told a story all on its own. A coach choosing to attend to the player who had just committed the dangerous act rather than the player who had just absorbed the impact. The optics were difficult to defend, and the explanation that came afterward only made matters worse. When reporters asked Stephanie White about the foul during her post-game press conference, she didn't hesitate or hedge in any meaningful way. She told them that DJ is going to play her heart out every single night, that nobody is walking in for an easy layup against her, and that she personally didn't oppose the hard foul. She even went so far as to say she didn't think Carrington intentionally went for the neck, despite having just watched the entire sequence unfold from a few feet away on the sideline. That combination of statements, delivered with confidence and without any apparent doubt, was not the response of a coach who had missed the play. It was the calculated response of someone protecting a player she had coached personally for 2 full seasons back in Connecticut, a relationship that predated both of their current positions and clearly still carried significant weight in her mind. The reaction to that press conference was immediate, and it was anything but quiet. Fans sitting courtside were audibly upset the moment the replay went up on the Jumbotron, and clips of the hit spread across every platform within hours, racking up millions of views by the next morning.
Cunningham because of the praises that she keeps receiving. She targeted her with a dirty shot that had absolutely nothing to do with basketball. And then after getting ejected, she runs to the locker room to play the fucking victim card. Like she didn't try to just take off Cunningham's head in 4K. Like we all didn't just watch it happen. That is not competition. That is a grown woman swinging on someone who she disagrees with and then screaming racism when she gets held accountable for it. DeJonai Carrington needs to be held responsible, and I'm not talking about just getting ejected from the game. She deserves a suspension. Maybe she'll think twice next time before she tries to take somebody.
Analysts started asking the same question on repeat, the kind of question that doesn't really have a comfortable answer when you consider all the facts. How does a flagrant 2 that visibly injures a player get described by that player's own head coach as something she personally doesn't oppose? The criticism came from multiple directions, with some commentators expressing disbelief that White would stand up for Carrington over her own player, and others going further by pointing out that you would never see coaches like Cheryl Reeve or Becky Hammon doing the same thing in that situation. Patrick Bet-David, never one to avoid a controversy, dove into the footage with characteristic intensity. He pointed out the discrepancy between what White claimed she saw and what the cameras clearly captured, breaking down the sequence frame by frame and making it impossible for viewers to miss the contradiction at the heart of the story. He highlighted the fact that White's eyes were locked on the play during the exact moment it happened, that she wasn't looking down at a clipboard or turned toward an assistant coach, but was instead watching the entire sequence live from a clear vantage point just a few feet away. That detail became the cornerstone of the argument that White's later explanation simply didn't hold up under scrutiny, and Bet-David made sure his audience understood exactly why that mattered. The pressure on White continued to build throughout the following days, and it built specifically because her original comments hadn't come from a place of confusion or uncertainty.
And the poll was, do you view this as a sincere statement by Stephanie White, the coach?
Yeah.
but vote one of them. Just pick one of them. 77.4% said no, 100% forced take, 75% forced take, 25% forced fake. And then you got, yes, it's real, 4.3%. Tom, your thoughts when you hear a coach like this who got called out by media by trying to BS and allegedly trying to protect her player, Sophie, who got a flagrant 2. All the referees agreed that was a flagrant 2. The girl got kicked out, and then she says white privilege, and now she's coming out realizing
they had come from someone who appeared to have seen everything clearly and chosen her words with confidence anyway. 3 days after the original incident, with the backlash reaching a fever pitch, Stephanie White stood at a podium again with a noticeably different tone and a noticeably different story. She explained that she hadn't actually seen the play develop in real time, telling reporters that she had gone straight from the bench to a scheduled press conference and had only realized how bad the hit looked once she watched it later on replay. She added that she takes it personally whenever anyone suggests she doesn't have her players' backs, insisting that she rides with every one of them, no exceptions, all sideline angles side by side. With her new claim about not seeing the play live, the timeline simply stopped making sense. Her head doesn't turn away. Her eyes don't drift toward a clipboard or an assistant coach. She's watching the exact sequence as it happens, in real time, from a clear vantage point just a few feet away. Whatever she saw that night, she saw it as it occurred, not 3 days later while reviewing a highlight package. Patrick Bet-David certainly wasn't reluctant to say it.
I don't care if you agree with it or not, you're wrong, but it starts to make me think you care more about the overlying social issues and not pissing off other people in the league and saying men can play in the league because she's one of those players. Coaches, when asked, always is taking the far left side of it. This isn't politics. Your player got assaulted. Defend your player in the press conference. Be like, yeah, that was a dirty play. She should have.
He looked at the side-by-side comparison and delivered his verdict with the kind of straightforward certainty that has become his trademark. She was watching the play, she saw what happened, and her story about missing it doesn't add up. The most reasonable explanation for White's behavior traces back to a relationship that predates either coach or player's current roster. Stephanie White coached DeJonai Carrington personally for 2 full seasons before either one of them ended up where they are today, and that kind of history doesn't disappear just because 2 people are now technically on rival teams. Coaches who spend years developing a player build real trust with them, the kind of bond that doesn't switch off simply because the jerseys have changed. One isolated hard foul can reasonably be chalked up to bad luck or aggressive timing, but a second nearly identical incident against a completely different opponent in the same short stretch of games starts to look less like an accident and more like a pattern worth actually examining rather than quietly excusing. That pattern didn't stop there either. In a separate matchup, Carrington was shown reaching well outside the range of any realistic contest for the ball and catching Tiffany Hayes across the face, and later in that same game, she made contact with Hayes' mouth on another heavily contested possession.
Stephanie White draws criticism for taking a different stance from ABC commentators while defending DeJonai Carrington. So this is what she had to say. Okay, Stephanie White quotes this. She says, yeah, I mean, look, it was a hard foul. I don't think that DeJonai intentionally came out to get her across the neck like she did, but it did happen, and I thought it was the right call, White said in the post-game press conference. But one of the things about Nay is that she's going to play her butt off, man. She's going to compete. Nobody's going to go walking in for a layup. And so I don't oppose the hard foul, but I also don't think that she intentionally went.
Commentators who had already been skeptical of White's initial comments pointed directly to that pattern once the Valkyries incident became public. If Carrington's aggressive style kept resulting in hits above the shoulders, and her former coach kept finding new ways to soften the criticism every time it happened, then the conversation stopped being about a single hard foul entirely. He didn't just point out that White's story had changed. He pointed out that the change came only after the criticism became unavoidable, and he framed the entire sequence as a textbook example of a leader failing to take responsibility for a difficult moment. Meanwhile, the player who actually absorbed the original hit had her own version of events. and it didn't match what her coach initially said. Sophie Cunningham called the foul intentional in her own post-game comments, describing what it felt like to get hit that hard and making clear she didn't believe it was incidental contact. That direct contradiction between the player who got hurt and the coach who downplayed the severity of the hit only added another layer to the controversy. Because when the person who actually absorbed the impact tells a different story than the coach standing a few feet away, most fans are going to trust the account coming from the person who felt it firsthand.
Because you're not embracing the reality of the tense situation that the WNBA, and especially you as the coach of the Indiana Fever, is involved in. There are folks in Indiana at a home game booing you. You ain't the road team, you the home team, you the home coach, and they booing you. And Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark can speak up for you all they want to, as they did. And
not everyone inside that locker room reacted the same way, though, and that split is worth acknowledging honestly. Caitlin Clark publicly defended her head coach after White faced heavy criticism from fans and media, which shows this genuinely divided opinion even among the players who work with White every single day. Some players clearly appreciated her instinct to defend a fellow competitor within the league. Others, watching Cunningham deal with a very real injury in real time, likely felt something entirely different about how the entire situation had been handled that week. That kind of internal split says a great built on specific claims about intent and character. There's the walked-back explanation that surfaced only once public criticism became too loud to sit with quietly, an explanation that directly contradicts footage showing her watching the play live. And there's the passionate speech about standing by her players no matter what, delivered with real emotion, that somehow still left Cunningham waiting days for her own coach to say the hit looked exactly as bad as it did. Standing by your players sounds strong from behind a podium, but standing by all of them equally, including the one who actually got hurt, is a very different thing from quietly choosing a side and hoping nobody notices the difference.
You don't get out of here with your fake emotions. Ma'am, I'm sorry to say it. You're going to make me call you a liar, but I'm not. I'm just looking at you right now. Watch your eyes. First of all, you reading this. It can still be heartfelt because when you wrote it, it's from the heart. But when you're reading this, please don't take the cues from the paper to us. That is an inanimate object. We are real people. We're watching you. We're like, this is rehearsed, calculated, contrived.
Yeah.
Is it real? Come on, ma'am. Watch her eyes and watch how she get down. Watch how she try to fake that.
Patrick Bet-David's frustration with the entire situation came through clearly in his commentary, and it was rooted in something deeper than just the contradiction in White's statements. He pointed out that Carrington's aggressive style had resulted in a second incident against the Valkyries that same week, and he argued that the pattern could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. He suggested that sincere apologies don't need a one-pager prepared by a public relations team, and he questioned whether the league had signed off on White's carefully worded defense. His broader point, delivered with the kind of bluntness that his audience has come to expect, was that a leader who doesn't back her own players and doesn't take responsibility for her own words is a leader who shouldn't be in that position at all. None of this requires assuming the worst about Stephanie White as a person. Coaches build real relationships over years, and those relationships shape how people react under sudden pressure, often in ways they don't fully recognize in the moment. But when the footage shows her watching the play unfold live, when her own words afterward don't match the story she told days later, and when a nearly identical pattern shows up again from the same player within that same stretch of games, it stops looking like a simple misunderstanding. It starts looking like a coach who saw exactly what happened, chose to protect someone she used to coach when it mattered most, and only adjusted her story once the fallout made staying quiet impossible. The contradiction remains the central issue, and until it gets addressed directly and clearly rather than through another carefully worded statement days after the fact, this story is going to keep resurfacing every single time DJ Carrington ends up in another headline for the exact same reason.